Have you ever wondered if there's an actual humble pie you could eat? I'm not sure if you'd really want to. So long before eating humble pie meant to show a little bit of humility, umble-pie was an English recipe for a pastry case filled with deer heart, lungs, kidneys and liver. Delicious! After a few weeks of eating sheep's head and deer organs, I really think I just need to do a nice sandwich next week. The earliest recipe for an umble-pie comes from 15th century Lancashire in England, from a book called the Liber Cur Cocorum. And it's a really interesting book that's written in Middle English rhyming verse. In the 15th century though, it's not really a pie yet. It's more of a venison stew with burnt bread, ale, pepper and cinnamon. But if you look at the evolution of humble pie, there was a really interesting recipe a couple of centuries later from a book called The Accomplished Cook by Robert Mays, written in 1660. To make umble-pies. So I've got a pie tin that I've lined with parchment paper. Not only would this original recipe not have had pre-made pastry to use, but the pastry probably wouldn't have been edible at all. So during the Middle Ages in England, you didn't have pastry in your pie. You had a coffin. Now the term coffin meant casing. It referred to a pastry container used for serving food, which later evolved into the modern pie crust that we know. And you wouldn't actually eat the pie crust. It was more like Tupperware in its purpose than anything else. It was there to keep food fresh. Though ironically for something called a coffin, people would add a bit of theatre to their pies by putting live animals like birds and frogs in there to jump out at people when they opened it up. And then over time, as sugar and fat became more accessible to all classes, pie crusts became lighter and flakier and more edible. It's probably also fair to think that I'm cheating by using the pre-made stuff. I did think about making actual coffin pastry, which would just have been flour and water, maybe some lard. But quite frankly, I'm going to be making a pie that's made out of Bambi's entrails, so I'd quite like to eat the pastry actually. So now we have a pastry case for our pie and we need to add in bacon. It asks us to lay in slices of beef-suet or interlarded bacon. I don't have any beef-suet, so I'm going for bacon. Although I would usually use streaky belly bacon for cooking, given that the word bacon stems from the Middle English and Proto-Germanic word for back, it makes sense to use back bacon. So we've now laid our sliced bacon at the bottom of our pie. And now we turn to our umbles. So we have venison lung, venison liver, venison kidneys, and last but by no means least, venison heart. Okay, so the recipe says we need to cut our umbles as big as small dice with some bacon in the same form. Ah, more bacon, that's good. Where do I start? I'm gonna start with the heart. So the origins of the phrase to eat humble pie isn't exactly clear, because numbles, which is the word for venison offal, evolved from the word for loins, whereas our word for humble, i.e. showing humility, that evolved from the Latin word for lowly. So the similarity between how the words sounded and the idea that the common man ate less choice cuts of meat suggests this might be where we get the phrase. However, it's not necessarily that simple. Kidney time. So for example, venison's never really had a reputation of being a food for the common man. Centuries ago, the Normans and Plantagenets divided up the English countryside into large forests that would become hunting grounds exclusively for the wealthy, rich and royal. Kidneys done. Liver time. And these new forests existed only as habitat for venison, wild boar and wild game birds that only the wealthy could hunt. And as a result, venison became really just reserved for the wealthy classes. Ordinary Britons weren't able to eat venison unless they poached it, which risked them putting in a lot of punishment. And a lot of this has left a legacy of venison seeming expensive or inaccessible. So the idea that this humble pie existed for the common man really doesn't check out. Whew. Liver, done. Onto the lungs, which I'm actually probably the most terrified about, to be honest with you. I've never eaten lung of any animal before. Oh, it's really tough. You can just feel windpipe every now and then. It's really unsettling. God, I feel like I'm in Dexter or something. Come on, go straight face on. Deal with this. 10 minutes of extreme butchery later and we have venison umbles. So we're told to season with salt, pepper, as well as nutmeg. That feels like a lot of nutmeg, but as it's the only flavouring in this. Give this a stir. Doesn't this look delightful? So we're now told to fill our pies with our umbles. Lovely. So we add more bacon. Tells us to add butter. We have to liquor it with claret. Some strips of thyme. So now we need to close it up with a pie top and bake it. I kind of feel like it's missing something. And just like that, we have umble pie. So I know it's not the recipe, but I'm going to give him an egg wash, purely because my expectations are quite low for this, and I want it to look nice at the very least. And lastly, going to give it just a little blowhole. And now our umble pie is ready for the oven. So now that that's in the oven, we're just going to, and now we have humble pie. Here comes the test. Oh, I can feel it's got a lot of resistance. It's very wet. Oh, would you look at that? I can smell the iron. All right, next week I'm definitely doing the history of chocolate or something a little less intense. All right, this is definitely a bit of a kidney. Massively overcooked. Flavor-wise, kidney, I've got no problem with that. Have some pastry. The pastry may not be proper coffin pastry, but it's hiding an immense amount of death. That was liver, and that was lovely. I could actually eat that bit all day long. This is definitely lung. Oh, the texture. It's nearly midnight, and I'm rooting around between pieces of kidney, heart, liver, and lung, like a sadistic kind of lucky dip. Okay, let's try some bacon. Hello, old friend. To be fair, I don't think this is a million miles away from being quite tasty. Take out the lungs, take out the heart, and just give me some actual venison meat. Maybe have a chance to stew it with some aromatics a bit before, and you've actually got the makings of quite a tasty pie. So this is my first time tasting actual humble pie. For most of my life, the phrase eating humble pie was about humility, and I definitely feel humbled by this experience, I'll tell you that much. Give me some more bacon. Thank you for watching, as I question why the hell I still do this to myself. If you like that, let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see me recreate from history in the comments. And yeah, hopefully next time I'll be doing the history of chocolate or something.